You're listening to The Adventuring Party, talking about gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Owen.
I'm Colin.
I'm still Savage.
And I remain the Shane.
And today we are here to discuss the most exciting of new RPGs, Soulbound from Cubicle 7. Full disclosure, I playtested this, but that is no guarantee of me being nice to it. So, we are here to discuss Soulbound, the Age of Sigmar RPG. The first Age of Sigmar RPG. As every school child knows, the Warhammer, the previous old world, the previous fantasy setting, exploded, and Sigmar, hanging on to a glowing core of pure Sigmarite, flew out into the celestial void, from which he is rescued by a giant star dragon, who then takes him and finds 8 mortal realms, each one based on one of the previous winds of magic, and they build a new civilization there, finding many old souls and old gods from the old world hiding around or otherwise, found in tombs or ground in giant seed pods, and bring them back to life and form a new pantheon, and then chaos shows up again. And if it sounds like an 80s metal cover, that's pretty much what it is.
Oh, I'm getting distinct impression they lifted the plot for Neverending Story 4 and then renamed everything without vowels.
They renamed everything in a very copyrightable fashion. Dwarves are now Duradin, elves are now elves with a prosthetic A. They needed a nice new faction for new people to the hobby to be easy to paint, and they found that in the Stormcast Eternals, Sigmar's immortal lightning-powered god soldiers.
Land Marines.
They are a bit. They're actually weird because in the fluff they're nearly the opposite of Marines in some ways, because Marines are very much not humans, where these guys are very much still human. They're human or other souls that have been jammed into a lightning powered body.
They're enormous,
okay. They are huge. But
I've got some of the
people.
models here on my desk, and they tower above Space Marines. I know that.
Yeah. But they're people. They're not because whereas Marines are kind of not, because they've been so psychosurgery and everything. Whereas these people, they still have most of what made them human originally in terms of personality and emotions. It's but they're different over time.
I have to ask: do they go to the pub?
They do,
because that's where you're going to get your adventure started, right?
Well, sort of.
So there is a premise to how to get your group of Duradin and elves and Stormcast elementals together?
There's a super strong premise. Alright. If you were
Walk us
to look
through that.
at two RPGs, the old Wolfrup, the classic, and Age of Sigmar Soulbound, thematically, you could not have two RPGs that are further apart. In Wolfrup, you play rat catchers, duelists, desperados, people who are thrown together by the vagaries of fate, right? It's gritty, it's dangerous, infections, disease, these are all a big problem. In Soulbound, you play a dirty dozen, nearly, of elite troopers that have been chosen by the gods and bound together in a soul bind to give them extra special powers. And you are sent off to do missions to try and save the mortal realms from the predations of chaos or the undead or the Skaven or whoever. So thematically they're completely different. Wolfrup is gritty. This is
Death Watch.
Exalted. This is high-end mythical heroism stuff.
Well, to cleave even closer to home, it sounds awfully like the premise for Death Watch. They're Space Marine RPG.
Yeah, there are certain thematic links with Death Watch in that you are kind of a superpowered unit of things, and if you look through all of the standard archetypes, which are kind of the sort of pseudo pre-built characters, they are all different units from the Age of Sigmar wargame. So when you look through, you're like, oh man, I can play, you can build yourself a human, you can build yourself a Stormcast Eternal, you can build an elf, you can build a Duradin, you can build a Sylvaneth, but when you look at them, they're all units from the wargame. So basically, this is an on-ramp RPG for wargamers to come on in some ways. That people can come on and go, oh look, I play Stormcast Eternals in Age of Sigmar, I know I'm going to play a Knight Venator. And I'm going to fly around my wings. I'm going to shoot lightning-powered arrows at people. That's what my character does. You know?
And is that on-ramp intended by GW to go both ways? Is this
probably a little, but like I don't think it's a mystery that the game decided that its core resolution mechanic would be a pool of D6s. They were going, well, if we do it this way, hey, they've got D6s, they've got minis already, they can play this game, you know?
Well, you could be cynical about it and say that it's all about cross promotion and getting one type of gamer to become the other type of gamer, but you could just as easily say that the Cubicle 7 made the decision to leverage the stronger parts of the IP, the more iconic parts, and use that. Well, say people love this game because it has this, and this in it, so our RPG should definitely have this, and this in it as well. And it's not a crime to be giving the people what they want, as it were.
No,
I know that a lot of the early, until Deathwatch came out, you'd see people online complaining that, well, how do I be a Space Marine in my Dark Heresy campaign? My player does not want to be the weird goblin creature from the bottom left corner of a piece of John Blanche art. He wants to be a Space Marine. How do I make a Space Marine? So a system where, the thing I like about this setting is these character types, how to play one of those, is not a terrible way to go about setting up your game.
We should, of course, make the distinction between Deathwatch and the preceding RPGs being a product of Fantasy Flight's development teams. Cubicle 7 have made Age of Sigmar Soulbound.
Yes.
And they're obviously following their own sort of design goals and guiding lights on that one. And of course, they have their own 40k RPG in the form of Wrath and Glory.
Yes, Wrath and Glory.
That'd be correct.
And they're still producing regular Wolfrup. But this is the game of playing kind of really powerful characters from Age of Sigmar. And it's kind of playing... If you look at a cool Age of Sigmar model, in this core book, what they give you is they say, okay, here are the kind of effectively the forces of order mostly. So it's the elves, it's the Duradin, so you can have Fire Slayers, Caradron Overlords, the Stormcast Eternals, the Sylvaneth. There's no Seraphon yet, which is much maligned by some parts of the fan base. There's no Lizardman for people to play yet. But you can build nearly anything because the system is both fairly straightforward, but it's got a decent amount of complexity added in as you play. So when you build your character here, there's two options. You can build it from a pool of points, or you can pick an archetype. And an archetype effectively has spent most of your XP already, but you still get some choices about what you pick. So you basically go, okay, I can pick, my stats are already selected, but I get to pick some skills, and I get to pick some of my talents, and I've got a bunch of gear, and I can just pick my archetype. In about 10 minutes, my character's ready to go. So that is not bad at all. The game has 3 stats, body, mind, and soul, and they go up to 8 theoretically. Starting characters will cap at 4 for their highest stat.
Flashbacks to tri-stat system.
So what does the Soulbound part of the title refer to?
So the reason why all these characters have come together is that they have been bound together by a soulbind, a piece of old magic from the Age of Myth of Age of Sigmar, where you took a bunch of powerful people and you bound their souls together, which gives them a mechanical edge in the world. And it also comes at a cost. When one of the soul-bound dies, their soul fragments and is absorbed into the magic of the mortal realms. Which is, for a lot of the soulbound, a good thing. Because if you die in the mortal realms, you go down to Shaish, the realm of the dead, where Nagash takes your soul and uses it for stuff, possibly making you into an ashtray or an easy chair, or something that he decides he needs to use a soul for. So this is one way of getting out of Nagash getting you, or in the case of the Idneth Deepkin, Slanesh eating you. So some of them will join up because, hey, I want in on this because after this it means my soul will go into just become a part of the world rather than, the horrific constant torment for the rest of eternity. So yeah, I'll take this non-existence deal. Cheers. So the characters are bound together because of that, with the exception of Stormcast Eternals, which are not part of the Soulbound, because the Stormcast Eternal shtick is they die and then they come back. Sigmar reforges them into a new body. So there is a big mechanical edge. There's a very powerful mechanic they have called Soulfire, which they can use, which is a limited resource that comes back slowly that they can use to do really powerful things. Like, for example, I was going to roll my dice. Instead, I'm going to spend a point of Soulfire, and I'm going to get every one of my dice was a 6. So I succeed. Or after I rolled, wow, I screwed that roll. I'm going to spend a point of Soulfire, and I'm going to re-roll all my dice. Or I'm going to spend a Soulfire, and I'm going to regain all my metal. Or I'm about to die, I'm going to spend a Soulfire and I don't die. So there's a ton of kind of mechanical advantages given by Soulfire to represent this is why people enter a soul bond. It gives you a lot more punch and makes you a lot tougher. So that's why characters do it.
So those are akin to the hero point mechanics of other RPG systems.
Yeah, similar, okay. But it's like it's above something you'd spend probably constantly during a session, and below something you'd only spend once in every couple of sessions. So it's at a this is powerful. You'll probably only use maybe a point or two a session between the party, because the number of points you have is the number of people in the Soulbound, less any Stormcast Eternals, because they can't use it. So if you've got 5 players, you have 5 Soulfire. And if
but that's an interesting balance there. That the more Eternals you pack on, the less points there are available for the group as a whole.
Absolutely. And the Stormcast Eternals are a little stronger because of that. Their characters are
a
little bit stronger, and they can't die. So that's pretty good.
Always handy. Yeah. It certainly keeps your plot moving.
Yeah, they're always going to to be there. They may just not remember what they did.
And they get a little scene where they go back up to Sigmar and have a lovely conversation as he's complaining about having to make a new body for them.
Yeah, or rather, they're a screaming mass of lightning on a giant anvil, which is being hammered by a bunch of dwarf Durden servitors into shape again. It's not the best. It's not the best.
It's everything you've said so far. It really does evoke this kind of high energy game. Yeah. Like what do you typically going to do?
You're going to fight.
You're not going to kill 10 rats.
No, you're going to fight 100 rats at once. You're going to find 100 clan rats at once and be like, "That's 100 of them. Can we handle that?" And they go, "Yeah, but we have to be really careful because we could get killed here because there are 100 of them." When we play tested this, we started out going, okay, let's take on 10 gutter runners, and we killed them before I got a turn. And I said, okay, we're going to need more bad guys than that. So then we were like, okay, let's have 20 gutter runners and 2 rat ogres. Okay, they still killed them before Owen got a turn. Right, let's have 30 gutter runners, 20 clan rats, 4 rat ogres, a grey seer, and 5 night runners. Hey, Owen got a turn that go. Woo, awesome. So it's very, very high powered in some ways, which is great. Okay, so the way the game works is you have 3 core stats: body, mind, and soul. Body is being strong, being fast, being dexterous. It's hitting stuff. It's shooting stuff. All right, so body's a good stat. Mind is casting spells and tons of skill stuff, and soul is some social skill stuff and casting miracles. And it's also half your soul score is your metal score, and the metal is the most interesting mechanic in Soulbound. All right. So when I get along, I'm going, okay, I'm going to roll my attack. I've got a body of 3. Right. So I got 3 dice in my pool for my body. My skill, I'm going to look at my skill in thing. My melee weapons is 2, 1. 2 training, 1 focus. Each point of training adds additional dice to the pool. Each point of focus is a floating +1 I can apply after I roll. So I roll my 5 dice, and the difficulty number happens to be 5. I got 3 5s and a 4. I'll use that +1 to make that 4 or 5. So I got 4 successes. All right. So that's a really like it. So you've got like a kind of a not incredibly complex skill system, but a nice, decent skill system. What makes metal interesting is metal is extra stuff you can do on a turn. So you can spend a point of metal to take an extra move action. You can spend a point of metal to double your training. You can spend a point of metal to double your focus. You can spend a point of metal to take another action. So I can go, actually, I'm just going to attack twice. Attack once, spend a point of metal, attack again. You get back 1 point of metal every turn.
Ooh.
So basically, every turn you can be like, yeah, I'm just going to attack twice. That's what my character does with his metal. Other characters might be like, you know what, I'm going to cast a really big spell. So I'm going to cast a spell and I'm going to spend a metal to double my training. Actually, I've got 2 metal because I'm 3 soul. I'm going to spend to double my focus as well. And I roll and I get a really big result from my dice. Or you're going to say, I need to get over there really fast. I'll take my standard move and move. I'll spend a point of metal to move again. So it adds this, and PCs and more powerful monsters have metal. But it's mostly PCs. And that's the big edge that you have in the game to actually explode out. So we found that you had an explosive quantity to your character because of that. And one of the things you can spend Soulfire to do is get all your metal back. So if you had Soul 5, you're very high soul, you invested some XP of it, you have 3 points of metal. So in a turn you can go, I'll attack, I'll spend a point of metal, I'll attack again, I'll attack again, I'll attack again. That's 4 attacks. Cool. I spend a point of Soulfire, I get back 3 metal. Let's go again. I attack, I attack, I attack. And you do 7 attacks in a turn. So there's a tremendous amount of power in the game that you can feel you can tap into as a character. So your character feels like, I'm actually a big deal. When I need to be, I'm a dynamo of wrath. I'm unstoppable. You know? Which is cool. Which is very cool.
From what you're describing, Owen, it does sound like they have managed to put together a system that kind of well fits with the interdimensional superhero feel that they were going for, that they've got this setting where you've got these very powerful characters who will be bouncing around between the sub-realms or whatever they are in Age of Sigmar to hunt down enormously powerful guys and deal with them. Is this a good match of the system?
Yeah, it feels like, and one of the things is that you have 2 types of hit points. Effectively, you have toughness, which is your blade of. You've armor, takes damage off. You've got toughness that just absorbs damage, and toughness is whatever. At the end of the fight, all your toughness comes back. There's tons of way to heal toughness in combat, but wounds are what you start taking when you're out of toughness, and wounds are a big deal because wounds you basically can't heal with magic. So wounds you have to slowly recover over time. So you're really dangerous. You're hell on wheels, but you can also still get got. And if you start taking wounds, you're in trouble.
It seems like a pretty dramatic departure from the old world RPG or Woofrup as we know it, which is this very dark and gritty, rat catcher struggles in a gutter with a single Skaven for his life, and even if he survives the wounds, he could just die of the plague next week, which was very fitting. And the Woofrup RPG system was suitably lethal as a result. But it kind of makes me wonder, why is this the first AOS RPG? And kind of on the back of that, like, they have been very, very hesitant with the AOS license at all. Even the current computer games, I think there is one AOS computer game in development, but they are still handing out the old world license left, right, and center.
Yeah. If I had to guess, I'd say it was initially when Age of Sigmar started, the mechanics of the board game or the war game were nothing to write home about, and it took 2 years before anything came out for that. Really, and the setting initially was wafer thin. And it's only recently, over the course of a bunch of novels and a bunch more books have been written, they've developed it into something very interesting. And I think it's taken time for this to percolate out. Because I think people might have looked at it and gone, oh lads, it's not worth the risk. No one really likes this setting yet. But now it's starting to find an audience. And something like this is a great on-ramp for... Because I think RPG players, especially ones coming from something like D&D, might be on for, hey, let's play a Woofrup that's, a bit more high energy and kind of fun than the somewhat more realistic and kind of very European influenced classic Woofrup. So basically, this is a Warhammer RPG that's a bit of crack, it's a bit of fun, it's a bit, it's reasonably simple to get into. Whereas Woof is still, it's a fairly complex RPG, it's a very gritty RPG, and it can be difficult for a GM to figure out, okay, this is how I run this, as opposed to running D&D. Because while Woof initially might have had some similarities to D&D, over the course of years, the adventures have really sent it off in a different direction, where it's much more investigation focused, and it's much more like Call of Cthulhu in the Middle Ages, So it's that kind of thing instead.
And is there a concern with finding challenges for your opponents or for your players? Like you were describing earlier, your players are up against 30 gutter runners, 20 clan rats, 4 ogres, a grey seer. I mean, that's you're talking about a quantity of guys which is a tabletop Warhammer fantasy army at that stage. I have memories of playing Deathwatch, and it got to the point where, in a similar vein, our player characters were incredibly powerful, which is appropriate for Deathwatch, but we had a fight where we accidentally summoned a greater demon and we killed it before it got any actions. Like, literally a bloodthirster showed up in our room, and we were just like, oh, a bloodthirster, splat.
Yeah.
And the game kind of drew to a conclusion not that long after that, as the GM was just like, guys, there's nothing really left in this setting that is a challenge for you. Is that a danger for Soulbound?
We got some stuff nerfed because we were playtesting this and we were like, yeah, AoE's too strong, guys. You're going to have to ramp it back. And they came up with some clever solutions for that. That instead of all the bad guys having one wound in a zone, they instead got a situation where actually they swarm together and you add their hit points into a pool and AoEs do double damage against it, but you don't need to just roll one success and then you kill all 20 of those clan rats and they're all dead. So we managed to, they made some changes. Now, one of the bigger criticisms of the game is there's no CR system or anything like that in it, because quite rightly, the designers have said it's so different. What you'll find difficult is so different depending on what characters you have. If you have 2 wizards in a party, 2 people who can cast magic, a lot of the low hit point monsters become a lot less dangerous because your wizards can just go, well, let's just combo together and we'll AoE them off the table, whereas if you're all warriors, some of the low hit point individual warrior models can be very dangerous to fight because they get bonuses when there's large numbers of them. So you get nickel and dime down. So, for example, I was telling you about the metal. Most of the bad guys have no metal. There are a class of bad guys, champions, who have 1 metal usually. And then there are the greater demons. So the Keeper of Secrets, for example, has 4 metal. And the Keeper of Secrets will mess you up. Because the Keeper of Secrets is when you're base to base with me, there's a chance you're just going to go into a sophomoric, ooh, the musk. And then at the same time, I'm going to tear you to pieces. I've got 42 toughness, I've got 11 wounds, I've got 4 metal. A character, for example, would have usually about 7 to 8 toughness starting off and 3 wounds. So a Keeper Secrets is going to be way too much for a starting party usually to fight. There's ways to fight it, but it would be difficult to do so. So there's a decent amount of challenge in there at the moment. And the progression is relatively slow in the game, because
you're starting from a fairly high floor.
Yeah, it's also that the way it works is there's at the moment we've seen none of the adventures, but the GM advice is no XP for doing stuff. Just like you complete the session, 3 XP, nothing like that. What you get XP for is for the players setting short-term and long-term objectives for their characters, and the binding putting together short-term and long-term objectives of the binding, and you get XP from doing that. That can be as simple as get my pistol repaired as my short-term objective this session. I get my pistol repaired. I get an XP. I pick a new short-term objective at the end of the session. So it's down to the players to generate their own kind of stories and kind of vote for what they want to do, which is pretty nice. It's not for every table. Some tables will probably just be better going, we'll just do 2 XP every week, guys. Or we'll do 2 XP every 2 weeks or whatever. But some people are like, oh yeah, cool, I get to set the agenda of what we're doing. And I kind of vote by saying, I want to do this. Yeah, which is nice.
I think that's an interesting. I think that's an interesting system. It's not what I'd expect from the big bombastic thing, because you hear a setup like that, you assume you'll get missions from the gods, like Hellfire will burn a message onto the ground in front of you to tell you which High Wizard of Nagash has to be slain this week. But
no, Sigmar is going to walk up to you and go, guys, this is what I need you to do. Yes, I'm 12 feet tall and made of lightning, but I'm here. I'm in Haese. Come talk to me. Yeah. Like Sigmar's not abstract in this setting. He's over there.
Yeah, beating on an anvil. That's Shane. I'm definitely delivering my party's next quest by burning fire into the ground. It's an awesome idea. So you mentioned earlier the vast numbers of enemies you might be taking on, and of course this is piggybacking on the success or relative acceptance of a tabletop skirmish game. It doesn't sound to me like you're putting models on the table for this.
So they don't have what they did for areas in it. There's no orthogonal movement or anything like that. What they said was, like, we just do zones, and you sketch out zones on your table, and you put bad guys in zones, and you can move between zones fairly easily, and there might be a zone that's harder to move between, and you say, well, okay, this one you can only move if you've got jump or if you've got a fly or something like that to get around. But it's basically, it's not like, it's really like I can't move through because there's 5 guys there. No, you can move through unless one of them is opportunist or something and can stop you. So
okay, my question is, like, is this a model-led combat system, or is this much more theatre of the mind?
I think you want the zones, so you'll want some sort of battle mat or even sketch on the table saying this is where everything is. But you don't necessarily need models. You could just have, there are X guys here or whatever. I'll put some dice out. These are the there's where the gutter runners are. This is where the Skaven slaves are. This is where the Rados are.
It's an interesting setup where you don't need models, but if you do want to have some models, we have this website over here with has quite a few of them on it.
Also, if you thought putting D&D on the table was expensive, try putting Age of Sigmar on the table.
You don't need them though. They're like it would, if you have them. Hey, it adds to the ambience, and if you're using VTT, well, making tokens is as easy as you like. But it's basically that's the edge of it. That you just go, okay, there's 15 guys in that swarm. Just I'll put a number 15 beside them, start killing, and that's the trick of it.
In terms of the setting, in terms of the rule set, acting as a cage with which to bind players' ambition. Owen, how badly did you break it?
We got some stuff nerfed that needed to be nerfed. That was the important bit. So what it is now is it's pretty clever for the most part. So you build your dice pool and you're rolling your dice, and any test will have difficulty and complexity. Difficulty is the number you need to roll on the D6 to have a success. Complexity is the number of successes you require. So if you're rolling a DN4 one roll, that means you need to roll 4s and you need to roll 1 4 to succeed. Alright.
So you need 2 or 3 dice.
Yeah, in combat, your defense, what you need to roll, basically your defense is based on your body plus reflex skills. You add those two together, and that this is a thing called the ladder, which tells you which level of defense are you: poor, average, good, so on. And then I do the same for my weapon skill. If I'm shooting a weapon, it's mind plus ballistic skill. If I'm hitting someone, it's body plus weapon skill, and I compare the two. And if we're the same, I need 4s. If you're higher, I need 5s. If I'm higher, I need 3s. If I'm 2 steps higher, I need 2s. If you're 2 steps higher, I need 6s. You can have characters with like low accuracy, but they've got lots of dice. In some cases, and particularly with the bad guys, they're going, well, these Skaven slaves are rolling 15d6 against you, but they're only hitting on 6s, so they hit and they get 4 successes. Your armor 3, so you take 1 toughness damage. That wasn't very impressive by the Skaven slaves, but that's the way that goes. So that's kind of how you calibrate that. Most of the die pools are kind of similar at the start, but they'll differentiate quite quickly based on where you invest your XP and which talents you buy. And the talents are quite good at going, this is how you play this character. This is why, from an initially fairly similar looking standpoint, this character plays differently by taking talents and picking up stuff to make yourself, dangerous. For example, the Fire Slayer Doomseeker, which is kind of the evolution of the Dwarf Slayer. Same red beard, same, thing, is now covered in magic glowing runes, has a talent, basically the Doom Oath, which is when they're on 0 toughness, they do double damage. Which is ridiculous. But you have to be on 0 toughness. You're into getting, every time you get hit, you're taking wounds. And it's, they're really, really cool at that point, because they basically tend to go nuts at that point and start hacking people to death. So it's great.
So
you're riding a wave there.
So the impression I'm getting is that you can build a character to have lots of dice and just throw dice at the problem, or you can go so that'd be increasing your training, but instead you could increase your focus and roll less dice, but they're almost always come up as 4s and 5s. So you're going to always succeed on simple tasks.
The highest most characters, a combat character will usually have a dice pool of between 5 and 7 as a starting character. If you're and nearly every character is a combat character, but you should roll between 5 and 7 dice to attack with initially. I got one starting character up to 15d6. But
that's why they hired you to playtest.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much it, But that's still in, actually, because it's mostly grand. But I pointed it out. I'm saying this is a 15 dice attack. It's a really crappy, low accuracy 15 dice attack, but it's a 15 dice attack. That one is, you play an Ideneth Deepkin, which are soulless underwater elves, and you have a swarm of piranha you direct to attack people, and that basically gets up to 15d6 if you build correctly.
So we focused a lot there on the mechanics, which all sound good and interesting. Yep. What is Age of Sigmar like for storytelling? What sort of stories and campaign styles does this setting suit?
Fundamentally, in Wolfrup, you are usually trying to maintain a bit of a corrupt society against the enemies within. Pretty much. I mean, that's a lot of Wolfrup adventures. This one is a lot more about, actually, we're in the midst of attempting to retake the mortal realms from the forces of Chaos. Chaos conquered 7 of them, and we're 100 years into our fight back. This is much closer to the start of a grand crusade of liberation, where they're attempting to take back territory from the forces of evil, more or less, Chaos are not portrayed in this as the good guys. Chaos are portrayed as these are the baddies. They've been tormenting and, disrespecting and slapping people around the place for ages. And it's up to you to go in here as Soulbound and save the day. And they're doing, initially, the setting, they've got a good amount of kind of RPG advice. And one of the things they talk about in the setting is this is about the spread of civilization again. It's about taking back. Everywhere's collapsed into chaotic lawlessness, and it's about going out and building cities again and helping. You're the special forces who are there when the Stormcast Eternals, the regular armed forces, aren't enough or are too blunt an instrument. You guys are sent in to do a surgical job. In some cases,
tip of the spear, man on a mission stuff.
It's kind of like you put together this team of nutballs from different cultures and different things, and they're in to do jobs nobody else can do, and that's the focus of the game. So you're going in there doing stuff
classic
like that.
Trope.
Yep.
And is there scope in there then for doing other stuff? I've played the special forces guys behind enemy line style games. They're a lot of fun, and I really like them, and I think they're very, very well suited to RPGs because you get that small team of players doing their specialist stuff. Fits the tropes of RPGs very well. But is there scope then within Soulbound for doing other things like your courtly intrigue or your criminal underworld or something along those lines?
Because you're 100 years into the conquest. There are cities that were established where the rulers came in as young, vigorous warriors and have now grown old. their children have grown old, and there is like corruption starting to seep in again, and you need to do stuff about that. One of the first, they haven't put out any adventures yet. The first adventure is going to be you guys flying a Cordoran sky frigate to a city, and it crashes halfway, and you get to escort everybody in that sky frigate to the safety of the nearest city and fight your way through the terrain. The starter set they're going to do is going to be set in the recently liberated city of Brightspear, and it used to be Sinchian, and they took it back over from Sinch, but the bowels of the city still roil with chaos. So you've got to go into that city and help restore order there, and basically, help them get it under control, and maybe root out the chaos and other secrets that are underneath the city. The first adventure pack they're going to do goes to the city of Anvilgard, where the Dark Elves are effectively in charge, and there's a bunch of nasty Dark Elves who want to take over the city, and it's your battle against them behind the scenes to stop them from basically taking over. So already they've done 3 kind of sort of different sort of approaches that are quite city focused but are going to play out in a different way. So they're looking at, okay, what can you do that's kind of funky? And they've done a big write-up in the core book of an area in Aquishy, which is the Realm of Fire, which is the Great Parch. Now, when I initially thought the Realm of Fire, so everything's on fire the whole time. No, not everything's not on fire all the time. Everything's a bit hot and deserty, but there's jungles, there's, mountains, there's ice caps. It's not just all fire all the time. It's flat, but it's not all fire all the time. And there's a big map of it, and there's a ton of interesting stuff going on. And there's a couple of civilizations that survived the Age of Chaos by hiding out in little enclaves, and they're coming back out to reclaim their territory. And they're not super happy about these superheroes from Haese coming in and saying, well, we're in charge now. So there's room for other stuff to happen here.
It's got a lot of sort of more Morkockian feel to it, in that the space between realms is sort of fluid. There are, as you say, the civilization, but it's interspersed with towering sort of skull mountains and rivers of pure light and flame citadels, things like that give it that kind of metal cover feel.
Yeah. Yep. I do think it's a different take on the material. I was just saying, like, this whole larger than life.
It couldn't be more different.
Yeah, this big larger than life, big bombastic setting it's an interesting one. You can certainly see a lot happening with it. But I think why, there was been a lot of pushback about Age of Sigmar, but I think the Cubicle 7 are sort of in a pretty good position to go for this bigger, more bombastic version of the things, of the whole fantasy superheroes take a flying ship through the nether chaos to fight in a different dimension today. I think that works because they also have a well-supported Wolfrup line. They have, if you want to be the rat catcher, if you want to, be in fantasy Holy Roman Empire and die in a gutter because a goblin looked at you funny, you also have that available. So it sort of makes sense for this RPG to be, to lean into its more high fantasy, more, superheroes with swords idea.
They actually put in a grim and in the GM section. There's a grim and perilous mod you can do, where you basically have way less XP to spend. You can't play a Stormcast Eternal or Sylvaneth. You get way less gear. It's much harder to recover toughness. You can only use metal for miracles, so it's like, okay, you're way weaker, which is just a different way to do it. And so they put in some alternate GM stuff to go, okay, if you want to run a grittier version of this, sure, there's alternate rules in here for playing gritty if you want, which is, kind of funky.
Well,
Okay, so we're running up on time, so let's just quickly go around the table. A couple of last questions for Owen about the Soulbound, the Age of Sigmar RPG. Colin, you want anything that's preying on you? That was a wow,
Yeah.
wow, wow, wow.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have. I think I hit all my questions as they came up. Is this something that you would say? Is this a game you would recommend to people?
Yeah, I would. I'd sell it to them as like, this is heroic end role playing. It's, if you want something gritty and you're playing a Ratcatcher, Wolfrup is your man. It's just down the hall. There's the guy you want. If you want to play something a bit more like Exalted, where it's way over the top, but a lot more balanced than Exalted, I would try this. I might wait for the starter set to be out to start playing, or some of the adventures to be out, because I kind of want to see what direction they take them in. Yeah. But if you're a dedicated homebrewer, you could probably get lashing right away. There's tons of ideas in the core book. But personally, I'm going to wait. I'm going to start playing with the stuff, because I played some of the combat and it's really fun combat. So I'm like, okay, I'll enjoy playing this, but I'm just going to wait until both there's a good VTT module for it and the starter set is out, and then I'll get cracking into it. Yeah, that's my plan, at least.
People really thought that Cubicle 7 did a great job on the Wolfrup starter set that they made. It's small,
excellent.
It's small, it's compact, but it has a huge amount of flavour and usable material in it. So I expect anything. One question I'd like to ask is, how would you compare Soulbound to its sort of predecessor, Wrath and Glory for 40k? Because it doesn't sound like they're identical, but they are starting from the same place of this D6 based dice pool system. Do you think this is an improvement over the WOG product?
Wrath is it's a different game from a stylistic point. Well, it's a little bit different from a stylistic point, because you can scale your tier of play a lot in Wrath. You can play a tier 1 game where you're all just effectively underhive gangers, or maybe the poor bloody infantry. Or you can play a tier 2 game where you're movers and shakers and you're a little more important, you're inquisitorial acolytes or space marine scouts, or something more important, or tier 3 where you're an actual space marine or a tech priest, or something more important, or tier 4 where you're an inquisitor. So there's a lot more scalability in Wrath and Glory. Mechanically, Wrath and Glory is more complex. Not a bad thing, not a good thing. It's more complex. This is if you were looking for a lower complexity game, I would definitely recommend Soulbound. But for me, a lot of the time, I like the idea of playing in a different setting. So I've been playing a lot of fantasy games, so I'd like to play a sci-fi game. So I would be tempted to play both, because I really like the idea of Soulbound, but I also really like the setting of Wrath and Glory. But also Wrath, you're defending a system, whereas in Soulbound you're actually being a little more proactive. So that's going to have a slightly different cast on the gameplay. So they're similar, but they're not. It's not like it's the same system with a different coat of paint. It's quite a different system.
Okay, you've had a chance to pick over the rules as they were being written and play tested. I guess my question, Owen, is this a game that's going to end up relying on rules or rulings for those who have to run it?
Rules are very solid. The biggest area of modification you're going to do is numbers of opposition, and maybe house ruling some opposition to be more effective against your particular party. It's a pretty solid. Chassis, to be honest. I can't speak to high XP play because we haven't got there very much, but I'm hopeful that it'll be okay. That from looking at the greater demons, I'm like, yeah, they look threatening. And hey, they've got spell design rules that are actually good, which is a shocking aspect for me, because most games, spell design stuff is either, these enable you to build something totally broken, or just ask your GM. So it's got a solid rules base. I'm very pleased with it. It's and on the Discord, they've been very good at clarifying stuff and then adding in clarifications to the core book themselves. Because a couple of things we pointed out, they're like, yeah, that isn't as clear as it should be. We'll add in a clarification, and they put in a bunch of clarifications to it, which is very nice. Okay, well, we're pretty much out of time, so Owen, do you want to give us a final thought and take us out? I would recommend Soulbound if you're looking for some high-octane, high-end adventure in the truly weird and wonderful world of the Mortal Realms.
If you were to be give it a score between 3 and 18?
I would give it a 16. Yep. If you have any thoughts yourselves, hit us up on our social media or join our Discord or generally find a way to get in touch with us. But for now, this party's over.
Thank you for listening to The Adventuring Party. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, you can head on over to SpeakPipe and drop us a line. Or you can join us on our Discord server, where we keep the party going after hours. Otherwise, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, or Twitter, or you can email the hosts at party@theadventuringparty.net. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike version 3 license. But you probably knew that already. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and look forward to seeing you back here next week. Goodbye.